everybody's here except for Deb. Do we know if Deb's coming?
I don't
Even?
know.
I don't know that she's not.
Spoon
Spoon and Kim are both not here today, so we confirmed that we'd have a quorum with the three of us, and we're all here. So I'm going to call us into order, and we can start with recognition of visitors. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bob Fisher, Town Attorney.
I'm Patrick Moreland. I'm the Assistant Town Manager.
Right, and we'll get to you in just a second. Any other visitors? No. So we could start with the minutes and the agenda. Is there anything we need to add to the agenda?
I don't know if we can, well, I don't know that we would add it now, but it doesn't seem, unless it was intended to be in the administrative reports, the things that we put on our work plan, the budget review, climate survey, and leadership council formation, things aren't on the agenda. So if someone looked at the agenda to see what we were talking about tonight, they wouldn't know that those things are there, even though they're on our work plan. So I think we need to make sure that there's
So let me just
coherence
think here.
between-
Which one? Let me look at the work plan, because I looked at that.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know, David, because I typically send that to Barb, and then I looked at this, but I don't think I saw that it was missing, but I think I sent it to Barb. So it must have been an email kerfuffle. But
Can we discuss that under other?
we can discuss all of it, because none of it's actually requiring a
voting.
vote, I
Yeah.
don't think.
nope, I think
So-
maybe just whether they're going to be on future agendas for further exploration.
All right, and the other thing that's not on here specifically, although we talked about it before, was just checking in about September 19th Act 46 meeting, and who's going up to that meeting and what we want to say. Again, it's not a vote, but that would go under, both of those are going to go under the other business, I guess, unfinished business perhaps.
Well, we can do it under the Act 46 alternative governance, since the board, the state board is, the purpose of the meetings to talk about the alternative proposals. So that would be appropriate place to talk about.
We're talking about there. All right, so was there anything on the minutes? It seems like I had. Anybody else?
Correction?
Yeah. Seemed like there was something that was missing. Anybody else catch anything on the minutes? Usually I note it. I think it was under the hiring, rehiring, that she listed the questions, and then she listed Jill is requesting that there be a process moving forward to look at how to best fill vacant positions when someone leaves, or if there could be a different position created that is more beneficial. Moving forward, administrators will be using the above questions. Lyle asked for input. Board members discussed any additional questions they would like to have to add to this list. Is there a need to say that more explicitly? Did we say that more explicitly, Lyle? Or is that
I feel
clear
like
enough?
that describes it, and then some of the suggestions that you had, I've since put in, like family input. I think someone asked about commingling classrooms, integrated.
There's just several times in here that, maybe it's because we were in planning mode, but the bottom line was Jill would like to see, Robin would like to see, David would, and it wasn't
Yeah.
like a specific
An action by the board.
Right, so I guess maybe we should be more clear, just to be specific, that we really
Yeah.
want an action. If we
The
want
thing that
it.
we make a motion and then vote on.
Yeah, I think we need to do that.
Kelsey's not here.
At this point, or?
Or she's not coming. So that's the other thing, Kelsey's not coming, and Spoon would be the clerk, and I did let him know, but of course he's not here.
Well, I can clerk for tonight.
Do you want to? So we called in and.
Yeah, there's nobody in Kelsey.
There's
I
No,
guess I
she's
will.
not coming, she couldn't come tonight.
Okay.
So we called in about 5:02, and this will be the first, we've welcomed Patrick and Bob, and then our first motion would be this one, to look at the agenda to approve the agenda and the minutes.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's kind of silly with three. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the two of you, jumping right in.
So you have a packet that we made a couple extra copies that Lyle, yep. And it's probably easiest to flip to, I think, the last page of that that has the map, somewhat like this. So what I would hope we can sort of walk the board through tonight is the process by which the property can be conveyed from the school district to the town, that property being the property upon which sits the new West Brattleboro fire station.
Maybe you can bring it closer to the camera so we can see exactly.
So what you'll see on there is that essentially the school board, town school district would be conveying to the town pretty much everything out there except for your parking lot, okay? And first off, I didn't know if the board had any questions on that. The old fire station and the old property of the town, part of it was by deed and part of it was through a very old 99-year lease for the area that the prior station was on. Then with the new station being built and its location, the idea was when that was all done would be to convey the property from the school district to the town. As to the lines, I believe Patrick and other people, the surveyor, walked it. I don't know if you wanted to add how you came up with the lines.
The shape of the parcel was the determination of a meeting that we had on site with Lyle, Andy, the fire chief, myself, and the zoning administrator. And this was the shape that everybody felt comfortable and agreed with. Following that, the town engaged the services of DiBernardo and Associates, and they produced this survey along with some language that Bob can use to develop the warranty deed.
So what I also provided for you is a draft warranty deed and the draft notice pursuant to Title 24, Section 1061. When a town or a town school district conveys property, you have to have authorization, which comes in one of two forms. One is going to a townwide vote, or two is to do a public notice that gets published in the newspaper, and that provides the public notice that they have 30 days to petition, with the 5% of the voters petitioning for a town vote on the particular conveyance. In this situation, it would be my recommendation to do that Section 1061 notice, because it can be done relatively quickly here, and then this conveyance could actually be done in advance of any Act 46 things happening later in the fall too. So from a cleanliness standpoint, with regard to any Act 246, it makes sense to get this done prior to that. So we can't actually have the board sign the deed until after that 30 days goes by without a petition being filed.
So can I just clarify, on the drawing, it's the dotted lines I'm looking at? And
No,
then
the solid line is the
solid.
new property,
The
so only this
solid-
part is gonna belong to the school district now, and all the rest is
So
fire
the
department.
dotted was what it was? Why the
The
difference?
dotted was what the town owned, and then what isn't shown here is the old leased area,
That's
which I think went right along this boundary straight across. But that was part of the 90, I don't have that
Then you have a
99-year
different,
lease.
the dotted line that's like a mix of long and short is something
What I
else.
was showing you is I think
The one that
lease.
goes around the outside,
Oh, yeah.
that's
the lead one
Right of
went
way.
across here.
Right-of-way line,
yeah.
old D line. and
So the
property line.
old property line was just this rectangle there, but now it's gonna be all that whole thing.
So the garden thing that's between, that next to the parking lot before the church, that part of the lawn, that's going to the town as well.
That, yes, based on this survey.
And I think that's Kelly, is that your recollection of what Andy felt was the correct way to do it? Because we had been taking care of it, or they had already?
I believe so. It was a pretty brief meeting that, I was there, but
I just remember when we did it originally, the idea was move the fire department along, that it had languished for a long time, and I think the will of the board, David, if you remember the same way, was just move things. And
Yeah.
we weren't too worried about like who was taking care of whatever, so I think if the administrators are fine, then it's
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so,
What would we need, I'm thinking about the motions that we generally do in the town where we approve move going ahead based on the administrative and legal advice, yeah.
yeah,
I think
And
here
then
we just
you
have
guys
to
can
do
just finish it.
a motion to post the warrant,
Correct.
the notice, is that what this is called?
That's correct. So at this point, the motion, if you're making one today, would be to post the notice of the intended conveyance, and that would then get published, and that kicks in that 30-day period once it's
Okay,
published.
And then at 30 days from now, board meeting, then we would do the motion to transfer the property.
So who posts
Right,
it? Do
unless
you post
people
it? Do
have
we
objections.
post it?
You would, ordinarily, I would have the town post it, but in this case, you would post it and send it to the, I'm assuming it's a reformer that you use? or-
Yes.
okay, so, I thought I heard you making a motion pretty much.
Okay,
What you said was a motion to post notice of the intended conveyance of the property to begin the 30-day notice period.
okay, I will motion that.
Okay.
I'll second. Any more discussion? When you post it, Lyle, with Bob's help, then you'll make it clear with some sort of a drawing or whatever. If anybody has any questions, this is what we've done.
Yeah. What we can do, I think, in the publication can also reference that copies of the survey are at the superintendent's office, at the town manager's office, et cetera. So if anybody really wants to take a look at the survey, we can make it available to them.
Or we can post this on the website as well,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
we usually post whatever's at the meeting. Any other
Can you
discussion?
send this electronically, whatever it is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that was
That was easy.
relatively painless.
Only took a few years.
Only took a long time to build it. I was down at the fire department for their breakfast the other day. No, I know you're talking.
Kids?
Anything else for me, gentlemen? I think you're getting off awfully easy. Maybe you should stick around a little longer.
Endowment.
Oh, yes, the endowment, update on the endowment.
We had sent to Lyle my memo with regard to that, so
And
I,
we forwarded it, but we haven't had a public discussion, so.
okay. From my interpretation of that, those funds and the issue of who would have control over those funds was litigated many years ago between the town school district and the town. And the order was that the town, that those, as much as they're for the benefit of the school, they remain town funds and invested under the trustees for public funds. That, in my view, would be what we call res judicata, or the issue had already been litigated between the same parties over the same issue. So I don't see that there is any new discussion on those funds. They're invested. They may not have the same return on investments that you might like through other private foundations or investments that the school may make, but by law, the trustees of public funds are limited in the types of investments that they can invest in, which are supposed to be, it's the public's money. You're supposed to be somewhat conservative with that. So,
And has the fund ever been tapped, used in any way?
well, all of these funds, the interest of it gets paid over to the school every year. So they just continue to whatever they earn gets turned over. It's not used on the town side of the ledger, it's turned over to the school district every year. I believe once a year.
How
Frank,
much
you
is
can,
that roughly?
Annually? Yeah, if you have a,
Well, that is something that Tom sent. That was
Is it
This
this
is
Tyler?
from
right here.
2016.
So from 2016, it was a total of $1,366
And then this much for the other group of
for
funds.
the Brattleboro High
Oh,
School.
high school, I'm sorry.
There's 1,700 going to the high school and 1,366 to the town school district.
And that,
That's,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to- go ahead.
no, that's what you were saying, that was the 2016 figures.
I was just wondering, this is money that has the same restrictions as the endowment on it, where you can you only use it for non-academic things? That, is it,
The private endowment that we
Yes.
created. I don't know that it would.
I don't think so. Each of these funds were funds that were set up a long time ago, so there, I didn't bring with me each gift, but John O'Connor, the finance director, when we were researching this, got out each of the old documents giving the money to the town. So each one had what it could be used for. I don't have that off the top of my head.
I meant more like, I believe it's Act 60 that says for the academic programs can only be the money that comes from the state for the,
From taxes.
Right, we
and the
can't
taxes. So what about
plant.
things like this?
Right. So that would be, in my mind, it would follow the same rules. We can't use that for something that we would normally be budgeting through our.
But it can be things like the winter sports or sort of like extracurricular,
Well, I wonder,
after school.
can Act 60, was well after that endowment came into place. I wonder, can it lay that endowment aside, or that, the purposes of that fund aside?
You mean, like, would it be grandfathered in? Is
Yeah.
that what you're getting at?
If it wasn't specifically
That would be true too.
in the law that it includes anything that was coming in previous arrangements.
That I would have to look up. I'm just not sure on that.
In any case,
wait until
well, it's $1,300.
Yeah.
So I don't know that.
It's not a huge amount of money. I just was wondering, like,
In our
well, where
budget.
is this fund money going into? What sort of,
Where's it used?
Yeah.
Frank, do you know where?
so those proceeds have been deposited into the Brattleboro Town School District Endowment Fund. And I don't know if you recall, I was just looking at our notes from when we reviewed this at the board meeting, and it looks like it's about a year ago. So it's invested, the fund balance right now in the fund that's all basically liquid cash. It's not stocks or bonds or anything. 115,000 is where we are at as a Brattleboro Town School District, and where we left the conversation was should the board refine the criteria for making awards and starting to utilize this. With the understanding that when a fund is only 10 or 20,000, the interest is not going to really cover much of a activity. But now that you're at a point where it could be $3,000 or $4,000 a year, it's a significant potential award to student groups or a program, a number of things. But at this point, as far as I know, the board hasn't defined.
We left it though, as the Bratt, and I don't think you were at the next meeting when the endowment came in and talked about what we had done.
Mhm.
We, speaking as the endowment person now instead of Brattleboro Town School Board. And then we were waiting to hear back on the town funds, and then the board was gonna come back and revisit whether we wanted to try to leave that, whether we wanted to disperse it, whether we wanted to talk to the endowment again about commingling those funds so that they were creating more, and
right, I think the
determining how to go
initial,
forward.
the sort of impetus behind this was hoping or questioning whether it would be the right thing to do to combine all of these various funds so that we could have a bigger amount of capital and then
Generating more interest.
we'd have enough interest to do some programs with.
Right.
So does that seem like it's a viable option, or could we just still have these three separate streams of interest giving us the same amount of money as if it was one big thing?
Well, it
Well,
sounds like that one can't be moved from the town. It couldn't come to a private endowment
Can't
either.
come to the private endowment, though the money paid over each year, that so long as it's used,
Yes, but we should find out, as Bob has said, what John O'Connor's document says about
should be used
the
for.
intended use for the funds. We need to honor
Okay.
the donor, and that generally never changes. So whatever that document says needs to be shared with the board. Probably new at one point, previous board, but I'm not aware of that.
I think those were scanned along with the memo before, so
Yeah.
if you don't have those, just let me know, we'll rescan those, but
I think I have it here.
I just need to know the names because they're all here, high school and, so.
It's Cusato, Bruno, Dowley Education Fund, and Clarence Stickney.
There we go.
Here's Bruno.
so long as you stick to the intent of those gifts, however you put it together for redoing your scholarship funds, etc., that I believe is entirely up to the board.
So just another reminder that sort of prompted the discussion. We received a gift from the Jennifer Anger estate of approximately $49,000. 46,900, and that's what really began the conversation around. Well, this is a fairly significant amount of a resource now, whereas before that it was small streams of income that were accumulating but hadn't been designated for a purpose. So the other thing about that was the criteria for the award was just for the benefit of the Brattleboro Town School District. There was no specific direction.
The most recent award was.
That 49,000.
So that's open to whatever, but
Yeah.
the other ones, it sounds like maybe there was something more specific,
Yeah.
possibly.
Right.
The documents you sent to us, some of them I'm not sure I understand very clearly, but are you reading through them while I'm reading them?
Like the Bruno one I just looked through.
One talks about Marlboro and Morningside Cemetery.
Well, I think you're looking at the whole, like, estate, and this was just like one piece. This is a
Here's the claims.
promotion of girls' athletics.
There we
Can I
go.
write that in here?
Yep, Clarence Stickney is interest
So that
and
was
income for the
$33.
promotion of girls' athletics. And Minnie Stickney,
So I think this is all,
Minnie is up here. Watson,
Yeah. oh wait,
George Brotan, is that? yeah,
I think-
it's up there too.
yeah, okay.
Anonymous, school directors, unless there's two Clarence Stickney, because the rest of these in
There
this,
is. There's two,
All right,
it's
so I bet
split
that's
equally
not it.
between the two school districts.
but that's not the right thing then. I don't think what you sent us is giving us the answers then,
Oh.
sorry.
I think
I'll
maybe
look-
it's a different document.
There are a lot of documents here, so I'll take some time and look at them.
If need be, Lyle and I could go through each of those and, rather than take your time in your meeting, but just to give what each gift intent was,
Okay.
so that at least you can, as you're using those funds or the income from that, use it for those particular purposes. So we can go over that. I didn't bring all of those attachments with me tonight.
Yeah, because it's the whole will here. Yeah. So I think that still brings us back to the original question that we had in October of last year, whether the funds that are sitting in the school district, the Brattleboro Town School District funds, can be sent away to be managed by the endowment that's been created, or is that not even an option? That was the legal question that I think has to be answered before we can even have a discussion.
That's definitely an option. It's very common in Vermont, but it's not so much sent away, and that it's very common. Like, for example, Brattleboro Union High School engages 3 local endowment portfolio fund managers.
That's still my question.
Yeah.
Whether it can be taken over by the Brattleboro School Endowment that's private and created separately.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a very different question, yeah.
Because the idea is whether we can mingle these funds in some way, and the endowment board wants to know whether it can be, if the endowment has to cease to exist to put these funds together, or if the money can come the other way, or if it needs to be some new entity, or the idea is whether they can exist in some way together and be creating more money together.
Or could they donate their amount into the town, the school district's
Sure, we could
non-private
do that.
endowment?
That's common, yeah.
Let's see if I understand it. Two questions. One is about the capital in the town funds, which we cannot take on, but the interest that comes to us, the question is then can that go to the private endowment?
Or the school district endowment?
That is a
So-
question.
And
Yeah.
it can go to the school district, but
It does.
it does.
That's already.
And that's by law. That's by.
Okay.
But I think the next question that I'm hearing is whether you can take those funds
Yes.
that belong to the school district and transfer those to a private foundation. And I'm not so sure, or private endowment, I don't know the details of that private endowment, but I'm not sure you can do it. I think it could go the other direction from the endowment to the school district, and then the school district can contract with financial advisors as far as the investment. That I think can happen.
Yeah,
But
and that's-
going the other way, I'd have to do further research, but I'm doubtful as to the ability to do that.
And as I said, that's the tradition is the school district board, subject to a CPA annual audit by law. As Brattleboro Union High School does, they have about a $5 million endowment, and the board has instructed the Brattleboro Union High School Finance Committee to oversee the investment policy that the board had developed and approved, and essentially evaluate the portfolio manager's performance annually. And I had suggested that Brattleboro Town Board consider affiliating with that service that's provided by those three portfolio managers, because that's what they do, and it's very impressive what the returns they have done with that low level of risk that endowment fund is designed to tolerate. So we had talked about, well, could we bring in the $100,000 or so of principal that's managed at the town level for the benefit of the Brattleboro school districts, and that's both the high school and the elementary school. And we just got the answer that no, we can't do that. It really doesn't change the recommendation that I was making a year ago, which is so you still have your own $115,000 in principal that is not actively managed, and I am suggesting that if we engaged one of our money managers that already have a relationship with Brattleboro Union High School, we'd do much better in terms of a return.
What is their normal returns?
Their objective is whatever the board asks for, and that is within a risk-return comfort zone, and the Brattleboro Union Finance Committee has asked for a return between 4% and 5%, and they've identified level of risk. It also reflects the major donor's requirement, Mr. Ames, the Ames estate, who bequeathed, I believe it was nearly $2 million in 2008. That bequest defined an investment policy that the board has implemented.
When you say that the $100,000 that our board has is not actively managed, are you saying it's just like money sitting in a bank account?
Yep.
Oh, so it's just
There's
earning whatever the interest rate of,
There is a little income, but not
yeah,
much.
it wouldn't be much of that
Yeah.
rate.
Yeah, there's no risk of of
So
losing.
there's two
What's
questions
the
here then,
bank
like one is,
Not even
should we invest that and have it managed? And then the second question is, should we try to combine the private endowment money with that one? So two
Well,
different
that-
things.
That goes back to the Brattleboro School Endowment Board.
Right, I'm
Because
just
they would
saying
wanna do
that
that.
I think that regardless of what that answer is, we
Right.
should proceed with investing this 100,000,
115?
150,000 and having it managed. Is that something that we should make a motion on today,
I was
or?
gonna say, let's make a motion that we see the,
Consider engaging the money manager.
well, not consider, see the actual proposals that, do they usually get the 3 bids from the people that, like, this? How did the high school come about?
It's through an interview process. It's not really a bid because it's a service that you're evaluating whether there's a good match between what you want and what that firm is, staffed to provide. So it's more of an interview process.
So should we say a motion that we interview a number, like 3 firms
Or do we
to?
just ask Frank to carry this out on our behalf and come
You've
back?
interviewed them,
I've done
so
this
we
on
really,
behalf of Brattleboro Union.
we want
Okay.
to do it again.
So we don't
Okay.
really need to do this, we just need your recommendation and move forward with an official,
Happy to make that, yeah.
but I don't think we can vote on it today, right?
Didn't warn, yeah.
Right? We didn't warn that,
Okay,
I don't think.
So
okay,
we're
so
gonna
let's put it on the
warn
next
a-
agenda that we're gonna vote on that idea.
So we're going to warn a motion to engage manager used by BUHS, the money manager BUHS uses to invest the Brattleboro Town School Board account.
And I would keep it singular. 100,000 is not enough to spread around more than one manager.
So the manager's singular.
Just singular.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Do we need to move that if it's going to be a warning?
I think you're going to vote on it next meeting.
Right, so we'll just put it on the
Just to
agenda.
put it on the
Okay.
agenda, we don't have to
It
vote
doesn't
on
need a
that.
30-day, okay. Now, the other part of it was to explore the conditions in the original, these original
Yes,
grants. Or,
and Lyle has said she's gonna do that and
But I
follow
need
up.
that.
okay,
So just put on the agenda for next time too, that Lyle will follow up.
explore the conditions,
Conditions for
is that
the,
what they are, conditions?
Yeah.
Oops, I found grant, okay.
Okay. So that's B and C. Did you guys have anything else you'd like to talk to us about?
No, it's a lovely evening out there, so we'll leave you to the rest of your agenda.
All right, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And I guess the last piece of that, you could put in the minutes that Jill will take that decision and information back to Brattleboro School Endowment and come back to the board with the decision if the endowment would like to also contribute funds.
So you're going to take it, share the information with the Brattleboro School Endowment and
Come back with what the board believes they'd like to continue separate or commingle and try to increase returns. But,
with their recommendation or their,
well, their thoughts, I guess.
okay.
But, I mean, our investment strategy has been very aggressive
No, it's, yours, yeah.
on the endowment, not for 5%.
but didn't you
at
say
all.
there's like some legal things about how much risk is
Right.
allowed by law for
Not
school
for endowment.
investments?
It's not for endowment.
Well, there was
Oh.
because the other people gave that in their $2 million request. They gave some
The Ames
parameters.
request.
So the
Okay.
Ames request,
I
they
see.
basically said 70% equity, 30% fixed income. And then they have a way of calculating how much is awarded or available for awards based on the difference between the rate of return and the inflation rate. It's pretty interesting.
So this is just legally binding based on what that person put in their will? It's not a law of the state of
That's right.
Vermont or something like
That's
that?
right. And just as an aside, all 3 fund managers have far exceeded the 5% rate of return in the last 3 years. But we know that we're at a historic high
We've
in
been in the
the
lag,
equity
yeah.
market. So they're,
Everyone has exceeded.
yeah, so they're doing very well now, and the true test of reflecting the board's interest is how will they do when the recession rolls through, and will we
We're
lose
not
as much
having
as we
that.
made?
Stop talking, Frank. No,
Okay.
no, no.
Right.
It's overdue, I'm afraid.
Hush. All right. So
Black
then,
Friday, Joe.
right. We're going on to committee reports. Yes?
We did not do any of
I don't see council
Oh,
warrants.
we didn't do the warrants.
Oh,
Sorry, we didn't actually put that in our minutes and agenda approval, so anybody want to
I
make a
move we
motion?
approve the warrants as presented.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we can go on, we'll sign at the end.
that. Just remember,
Thank you for
I'm leaving
noticing that
by
one.
6:30,
They're leaving by 6:30, you need them signed right now?
before 6:30.
Okay. Yeah, and by the way, we're done at 6:30 today, guys. 'Cause Frank and Lyle are on their way out the door at that point. All right, who would like to start? So Deb, do you want to go first and then we'll to
Sure.
the elementary?
This is typically the time of year when we receive notice to start putting our refunding application together for Head Start and Early Head Start, and I have not yet seen that, but I expect that I will within the next week or two. We are required to report annual statistics by August 31st in the Head Start and Early Head Start Program Information Report, which is what I draw from when we do our annual school information night. And we did meet that deadline. I just was sitting here thinking about some of the statistics that I remember. And the one that really jumps out the most was the compelling number of children we have in foster care. So our total funded enrollment at EES in Head Start and Early Head Start combined is 184, and we had about 20 families, 20 children who were in foster care. So that's a significant number that I wanted to share with you. Last week, Frank, Lyle, and I had a conference call with the folks in the regional office to begin thinking about what it means for EES and Head Start designation. If there's a merger that happens with Act 46, I think that it was a good conversation. We also talked a lot about the impending new accounting system that's coming through the Agency of Education and how we can make the fiscal system within EES complement that or work with that. And Frank was really good at articulating some of the challenges that that's going to present. And so we put that back on the regional office to think about how they might be able to support us, first and foremost by matching our funding year to that of Agency of Education. So right now our new money rolls in on March 1st and then we close out February 28th. We requested that we start July 1st and end June 30th, which would help not only the accounting system, but also our program operations, because most of all the other grants that we receive at EES are on that July to June timeline. So that just would be a better fit. And we also, Frank also made a good pitch for possibly some additional funds to provide more personnel in the transition. So fingers crossed, I expect that we'll hear something in the next month or two in terms of their response. I felt that it was a very collaborative, supportive conversation.
What was the general feeling if it did go through to a merger? I mean, did they have any concerns?
One of the concerns, but I think I responded to it, and I think that their concerns shifted somewhat, was, well, if you change your name, you need a new tax ID number, you change your new legal entity, then that may mean that Head Start and Early Head Start need to be recompeted in your community. And I was really not agreeing with that, and I pushed back by saying it really doesn't change who we are. It's only changing our name. It doesn't change our designated service area.
What does it mean, recompeted?
It means that they
Send
would
it out to
take the
bid.
money away and they would say to the community, okay, it's up for grabs, who would like to run Head Start and Early Head Start?
Okay.
And there would be a formal bidding, a re-granting bidding process. There would be a decision made at the regional office.
And that's not normally ever done unless EES did something really bad to lose its designation.
Or they
So-
closed or something.
Right,
Right.
so it
and
would be major.
Right, and the times that those situations have occurred, there are three actually. One would be if the agency was closed down because a federal review indicated there were some serious noncompliances. Another would be if the agency changed its mission or changed its scope and really changed the nature of what they do, then they've really changed their agreement with the contract to provide Head Start and Early Head Start. And I think that's where this thinking was going, and I did my best to help them understand it's not. And then finally, when there are new funds now, the federal government has become much more collaborative, and so they don't necessarily, now when new funds are made available, like there's going to make Early Head Start funds available in the community, it is not necessarily assumed that the existing Head Start program would be the only recipient. They now make those competitive awards. So, I mean, the speaker who was articulating that was actually going to do some research, and I would be very surprised if that's what comes back to us. Just two more things. One, I may have already mentioned this a month ago, but just another reminder that we did secure funds from the Strengthening Families Award that is coming through. It is now in it's a statewide grant that's now in its final year. And so from now until July, we have money for our behavior specialists, which we have found to be invaluable. In fact, the numbers on the program information report around the number of issues that we have with behaviors have become significantly less since we've employed the behavior specialist who works with families, children, and teachers. So we know that we have enough money now for this last year, so we'll be looking for ways to continue that starting in July. And finally, in the World Cafe event, we're still tabulating the results and talking to folks. One key suggestion that was articulated from the staff is that they really would like to have an opportunity to come together and do some networking, some socializing. And we've tried a couple of things that have not been met with a schedule that's suitable to our, particularly our staff with young families. And so now we're moving toward the idea of having a very broad-based event sometime in October that would be inclusive of our staff, their families, and our program families. So we're generating ideas at this point, such as Santa's Land. I've contacted them to see if they would work with us. Most likely this event would be on a Saturday, so we are looking to do that one day in October.
Thank you, Deb. Jerry, pass it down.
Beginning of the year monthly reports. So, around. We were in school for 2 days in August. So,
More than the high school and the middle school.
but I think the key things that you're going to be looking at are our enrollment for the year. Where is that number?
Top one.
Very top.
Very top,
143.
143.
Is that up?
90. What's that?
Is that up?
It's about where we were last year, 142, because of pre-K. We always hovered right around the 128 to 130
The
mark,
pre-K.
and so with pre-K, that's where we stand. If you go to the new entries and moved or transferred, 6 new students starting at Oak Grove in those 4 grade levels. Of course, not to exclude the 18 that are brand new from in kindergarten and the 14 that we have for pre-K. So, but 6 new that I'm sure that Academy and Green Street also have some brand-new students. A lot of new families moved into the area and enrolled. And then Oak Grove just had 4 students who left since the beginning of the year, since the last day of school. Either went to private schools here in the area or moved out of district.
And do we ask the people with the private school, do we have any idea why?
Kind of, sort of.
Just, and are they
Well-
problems we're addressing anyway? And
Yes, I mean, I'm trying to
I
just
wanna
be
make sure
careful.
that we're
I'm just trying to
not-
be careful to
Right,
make
for
sure that I'm
confidential.
not,
That
yeah.
makes them
Exactly.
identifiable.
Without asking specifics
Yep.
about the students who just left, the 4 students,
Yep.
I'm just have been wondering if this is something that we could track as a separate thing, because students who leave to go to another school because they moved is completely beyond our responsibility. But students who feel like I am not having my needs met here, or the family feels that way, and I'm going to choose another school in the same town, I'm just wondering if we could track that more generally and see if there's any trends that might point us to something that we could address.
And maybe we don't want to track, so maybe we just, I think we talked about not reporting this number at all, but we wanted to know about it. So maybe we keep that number until the end of the year or
Right.
halfway through the year. And then we hear, in the aggregate, 30 students left and
Yeah, I feel like that might
2
be a
of them
good
were
thing to have at
private
the beginning
school.
of the year, actually, because I think that's when a lot of people will make this decision, is like after the last school year ended. So maybe if we talk about it at the beginning of the following school year, about the whole year's worth, what happened, and see if there's any that emerges.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
in my recollection, I didn't think that it was the number so much as where they went that was more reflective, or that could release more of an identity thing.
That's good.
So,
That's what you said.
Yeah, right.
No, I
Just
said
about,
differently.
I meant like, if we're noticing, okay, we had over the course of the school year, 12 students chose private school, and I'm noticing that 8 of them had such and such an issue. You know what I'm saying? So it's what you just said, more about like what are the reasons, not so much like how many are we losing to this and that, but like what's the overall trend?
I would say that all 4 of those students, I could, easily talk to Lyle about why. Not all of, there were a couple. So anyway, of the circumstances behind why those 4 students left Oak Grove, and we could have a conversation as far as whether or not they felt that their needs were met, whether there were any kind of issues, and whether or not we felt if they were being addressed.
So
I feel confident that we were addressing any particular issues, that it was just sometimes it's just a family choice that how work schedules. I have families that are still very active in OYASI, the OYASI program, and that's challenging when the OYASI program is a day program and they're pulling their children out sometimes, and they want to ask for 2 days a week to come out of our school and kind of be excused that is their choice of an educational setting. So they want to have,
public and private together.
yeah.
Basically.
and that.
But I even feel like that could be something useful to look at overall, like, okay, we have a lot of people who are so interested in having an outdoor educational experience that we're losing this small percentage of students to private school for that reason. That's interesting to know. And it doesn't necessarily mean that something was wrong with the school's approach, but just to know, this is what's driving people to make that choice. I also know several people, just anecdotally, that have left for a completely different reason. And so that's why I'm just kind of interested in overall, if we look at like the 30 kids who, I'm making up that number, who left all 3 town schools over the course of a year, what happened to them all? To the people who chose private school, not talking about people who moved away or people who the school itself decided we're gonna pay for an out-of-district placement, but the ones who left by choice for a private setting
And at the same
or homeschool.
scheme, I'd kind of like to know how many left to go to other schools within our supervisory union, just to have a feeling of how much transiency we have going on.
But that's like more, not necessarily the desire to leave the school. Could it just,
Exactly, but that-
they got a job in a different town, or that was where they were able to buy a
Well,
house or
we could do
whatever.
something relocated out of district, or out of supervisory union, relocated in supervisory union.
Right,
Private
okay.
school
Or, and then homeschool,
or homeschool.
yeah.
But I think as far as finding out what you were saying you want to, is there a pattern or a trend or something that a lot of
Right.
people are reflecting? We'd have to we'd probably have to generate our own questionnaire and then do exit interviews, or ask anybody who's doing that to actually tell us
Yeah.
what those reasons are.
I mean, do you guys feel, as principals, do you feel like you're aware of exactly what's behind people's decisions?
I wouldn't say exactly, but
They talk about it with you when they're
Of
like,
course,
could you
yeah.
make it more like this? And then at the end, they're like, okay, we're gonna go to that other school.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we
Again, we
need an
love-
exit interview if we've already got that information.
Yeah, sometimes they say, we love everything that you do, and we also love this other program, and for a year, we're gonna give our kid this opportunity. And then come back.
Okay,
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking Jerry when I said, is there, not to get, too much with confidential, but are we addressing whatever, are you seeing, and I think that's still a valid question that we didn't really answer for the three of you. When you look at your numbers of who's left the school and thinking through those cases, do you see cause for concern? Is there something that we should be addressing in a different way?
Well,
I'm actually planning on reporting out an exciting trend tonight in that area.
and we also know that there's a private school in the area that if you want your children there for middle school, then you pretty much need to have them there for 6th grade, because they're not going to be admitted because there are so many wanting to go in at 7th. So we have 6th grade students that leave, so they're assured that their child will be there for 7th.
And similarly, kindergarten and first grade at that school, you're supposed to kind of do the two together.
I think it's just kindergarten. We're talking about Hilltop, is that right?
This does what
It's
was
3,
before.
4s, and 5s are together, I think, so the kids will enter as first graders instead of coming at kindergarten. They stay 1 extra year in nursery school, or whatever it's considered.
Kelly, did you have something else you were going to throw? So Jerry, we
But
have
again,
once
my
again
enrollment
taken
hasn't
your
gone down, because
report.
if you look, 4 students left, we brought in 6. So, when we talk about enrollment and that sort of thing, we're
Something in the water
we're
over at Oak Grove.
maintaining.
No, hold on
Well,
just a sec, because I think the thing that Robin's asking for that I'm also interested in is getting that information, which would require you to, for when you know that a parent is taking a student out to go to another school in the town, private or homeschool or whatever, that you record that data so that we get it, rather than, well, there's 6 of them, that we actually get the information.
So Robin was suggesting that we look at that at a specific point in the beginning of the year. We do have our work plan with a little bit of space.
Well, this would be the following, let's put it
Well,
in
they
this
can-
year.
They can look at it this year, you
Yeah.
already know.
I think the concern for us is sharing it publicly.
We wouldn't ask you to share, that's
Okay.
not what I'm talking about, I'm talking about for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
For our-
Well, and you could share publicly numbers,
Right.
and then we could rise and go into executive session
And
when
we could share
necessary.
publicly the reasons too, but certainly not the names.
Right.
So if
Or-
there's
and
one
not- I
student
don't-
from Oak Grove that's left because of XYZ.
Yeah, if the
you
number
cannot
is
say
less
that.
than,
Right.
we had a number that we
Less than
talked
10.
about,
Yeah,
10.
less than 10.
Yeah, so if it's less than 10 for a specific thing, then we would have to be in executive session to talk about what's going on here.
So I think to make sure that this actually happens, I'd like to move that we ask the administrators to, when a student leaves to go to a private or to homeschooling or another school in the town, that they record the reasons. And at some point in the year, we'll review that.
So that's your motion.
Yeah. We'll-
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, and then I'd like to actually
So
put it
you
up.
have to
to
know, we can
the
only
board.
record what they tell us if they tell us.
Right.
They
Yeah.
may not tell
Yeah.
us, they may
Right.
say.
So-
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
still think it seems like the administrators are closely involved enough with these families that
They'll
they
know.
can just go off of their knowledge, not having to do a specific interview with the families. That was what I was
Right, so I think,
confirming.
I think all of it's being said, but I think David's okay in putting it down, and so that you guys just
Yeah.
remember to track it somewhere. But I'd like to have a specific time we can look at this, just to know, and I want it before town meeting, in that comes up every once in a while at town meeting, and beyond that, I don't particularly care. If you feel like looking at the information now at the beginning of the year makes a lot of sense, or later, I don't.
I think this could be more valuable, absolutely, before telling you, but I think this could be more valuable after a few years than after 1 year, because it's a really small number of kids that do that.
Yes, but I'd like to look at it
Yeah.
every
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
So.
Right.
So I meet with Brattleboro Town tomorrow, and we can look at what makes the most sense for at the
So
end of the
just put
school
it on the
year.
agenda that next time we'll come back and set a time in the work plan then? Is that what?
The next agenda?
For the next agenda, yeah. Barbara's gonna have a long list from Lyle tonight, she's doing it. So Jerry, I
Yes.
think last time at your report, we went all the way off track like we just did again. Which,
Okay, you just have such interesting data.
is there anything else you would like to say now that we've monopolized your time?
That's okay. No, just a few things. If you turn to the back page, I do want to highlight a couple facility updates for
There's
you.
no back page.
Second page, oh,
She's meeting with the administrators
Did you-
to say
do you have
when
facility
we
up-
should put in our work plan.
Nope,
oh.
you'll just
Well,
have to tell us.
Can I just tell you then? Sorry about that. I have a second page.
There they are.
No, that's somebody else.
No. Is this-
Anyway, late July, when we were having all the thunderstorms, at some point, Oak Grove got hit by lightning. Because it was, we were in the building, we didn't see anything, but as lightning goes, it's electrical, so all of a sudden you're going to plug something in and it doesn't work. So we were having our normal summer service for our furnace, and folks came in and they said, you have like a whole section of regulators that turn the, I'm not gonna be able to talk, but turn the heat on and off, and how it's on different timers and all that were blown. So a whole section of the building were like blown, and so I submitted something to Frank, and we submitted something to the insurance company. So that section was, I believe, estimated about $7,500 to go in and to fix all that. We also had a section of the building which involved pre-K, our art room, and another classroom upstairs that are not part of the timing system. I'm not doing a very good job, I'm trying. And so a lot of times Greg has to actually go in there and turn them on and off right from the heater, as opposed to having the whole furnace regulate that. And so since it made sense, since we're already having to replace a third of this building, that we at the same time actually get the other third of the building tied into the system. So I certainly in my budget don't have money earmarked in my regular general maintenance account for that, but I do in my capital expenditures. So if you look at your capital plans, it has $70,000 for a roof, for roofing, for a section of the roof. So we've been repairing the roof, thinking that we would just take that section we just keep putting Band-Aids on it, that we would just redo it. But with this, I just want to let you know that that's probably where some of that money is coming from. So we're looking at about 15 together. Maybe, what was it, Frank? Maybe about 12,000. We don't have final, that was just the estimates right now of what it might be to really get the entire school programmed into our furnace, as opposed to having like, oh, it's cold here, oh, it's hot here. Then he can program it so that when everybody's out of the building, it goes into unoccupied mode, and everybody comes in, it goes into occupied mode.
Is it kind of automatic that the new controls would work a few years down the road when you get a new boiler? Or maybe next year, a new boiler? Will they be, like we replaced the boilers here and then had to do a separate process and separate funding to replace all the controls and all the radiators. So can we replace the radiators or the controls now in the furnace, and they do it opposite, do it
At Oak
backwards.
Grove?
At Oak Grove.
Well, they did an upgrade on that,
Yeah,
that
a
system.
couple of years ago.
So they've integrated the control technology system with the current boilers, and they're pretty much up to date. This was 3 years ago, I think we did a major investment to upgrade the control system, so I think they're okay for.
But you're saying if they replace their boiler, they wouldn't have to again replace all of these controls,
Right.
right?
Well, the obsolescence factor is just like our laptops and our smartphones. That is what causes a need to replacement. It's not so much something breaks, it's that,
Whereas here it was a half a century
yeah.
for it to
I
change.
see.
But it didn't do anything special now, yeah. Anything else, Jerry?
No, I mean, you can read the reports from the PD that we did. We had, what's that? You can't, but I will try to,
can forward it.
I can share it with you. We have all these online, so I can certainly share. I apologize for that. You can read the front part. Thank you.
All right, passing down to Mark.
Okay, pass the
We
sheet
have it.
around,
Yep.
okay. So I was going to start with enrollment. We have registered 21 new students this school year, and 17 have moved over the summer. The exciting thing is 11 out of the 21 students are private school students who are coming to Green Street School.
Of all ages.
Yeah, yeah. So we're really excited about that. As we tried to, share in our spotlight last year during our slideshow, we feel really good about the changes that we've made, and really feel like we've in a stage of transformation. And the past couple of years, we've registered quite a few kids from private school, and it feels really good. So excited to report that out. That's a big figure. Some of the other things, just we've had a really nice start to the school year. It's been hot, it's been uncomfortable, but smiling faces, and I think everybody's happy to be back at work, and students seem happy to be back at school. First school sang of the year is tomorrow morning at 8:25. Some other dates I'd like to point out. We're prepping up for our after-school program, which starts up in October. So for the month of September, we're generating ideas about different programs to offer and getting organized around that. We have one club that has started. We have a cross-country team, and they started practicing this week, actually. And we're hoping to take the kids to 3 to 4 different cross-country meets this fall. Backside, we have our open house barbecue on September 26th. That's a Wednesday night, starting at 5:30.
Mark, when you say the 21 and the 17 out and in, sorry, in and out, that's
Yeah.
not including kindergarten or 6th grade?
No.
Okay. Perfect. And do you remember what your number was last year?
Which number?
The total number of students at the
I think
beginning of the
it
year?
fluctuated between 222 and 230 throughout the year.
So you're about the same too?
Yeah.
Kelly?
Right, send them on down. Academy's holding steady at 349 students. We generally stay right around 350. Something of note that we added to our report form is the HCRS and social worker caseload, and then the average daily health visits. I think it's really important that we look at that, and I want to explain the health office visits, but
That's including kids that go in to get medication.
it's including kids for medication, and it includes radio calls that require documentation. So a lot of
Like
these were
somebody
just
calls on the
radio
playground?
calls about student health monitoring, but
I'm going to keep this if someone's like, do you really need a nurse? Well,
Yes, it's pretty incredible.
I can't
It
believe
really
one
is.
person could do 80 things in a day.
So the
So there's two, right?
visits are 20 to 30 kids per day who just come for anything from a Band-Aid to whatever. And then the medications are fewer than that, and the radio calls are a lot, but she's pretty busy. We have a part-time health para a few days a week, but yeah, it's a pretty big number. And our social worker and HCRS clinician have been working hard to get their groups running and reaching out to families. And I had a really good conversation with them today about this number too, which is, it's hard to pinpoint a number because a lot of what they do is so fluid. And it made me think back to our conversation at the last meeting about connecting parents to community resources. And that's a lot of what our social worker is doing. So she said to me today, I can't consider that a caseload because I'm just hooking them up with another agency, or I'm doing, you know, X, and then it's not that she's done, she's built a relationship and she monitors, but it's not an ongoing kind of a caseload. But I think it's important to just remember how many families they're involved with. It's
This
pretty
is the
incredible.
percentage of total students.
Yes.
13% of the students at the school are on the caseload of the social worker.
Yep, some type of support or interaction, and that will increase as the year goes on and they start meeting with groups of kids. But, we've had 19 new students added on August 30th. We've had a few more since then. And lost 14. I didn't identify where they went,
International
but
students, or no?
say it again.
International students?
Not really, just local or moving to a different state. Yep. Let's see, backpack did not start yet. After school programs will start up pretty soon as well for us. We've got our first all-school sing on Tuesday at 8:40, which we're looking forward to that. Our open house and barbecue is September 20th from 5 to 7. And something I'm really excited about on the backside is we're starting a parent group that will meet before all school sing every week. And I think the topic's going to start out with trauma, adults who have experienced trauma and how they cope with that in terms of running their family and how that trickles down to their kids. So we have our parent liaisons, we have 2 people in that position this year, and our counseling staff that will meet with parents at that time. So I'm excited to see how that evolves. And John and I have been sitting in interviews this week for our facilities manager position, manager, hoping to make a decision Friday and get somebody on board. We've got a great candidate pool, so.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no.
Lastly is our teacher PD. I just wanted to let you know we welcomed back our staff on last Monday, and we did pretty heavy workload right away, but we introduced our new literacy curriculum, which is Reading Street. So teachers were in workshops all day for that, and Paris had a really wonderful in-depth PD with John and our behavior staff about school systems and preventative behavior management strategies.
So
So
are
it was
all
a
3
great start.
schools on the same reading street now?
Yes.
And is everybody in the supervisory union on that now?
One school is not.
Thought we were all heading.
Everyone else is. One school will not. They had already adopted a different program.
What time was your barbecue?
Our barbecue starts at 5:30.
We did say, guys, that we were gonna try to get to these sorts of events if we could. So I'm just trying to throw it in my calendar and see.
I'll be there.
And Oak Grove, do you have one too? We heard
Yep.
from both of them.
Oh, yep, what?
You have a
thing?
barbecue,
We already had.
Oh, no, you have a
We had
breakfast.
our welcome back
Yep.
barbecue
First
already,
day.
but you can come have breakfast with
On the
our
14th.
pre-K and K families to welcome them for their first full week of school,
When
full
is-
days,
September
September 14th, 9 o'clock.
Okay.
very cool.
Lyle.
Okay, so Frank and I have lots for you because you had sent a lot of questions. So I'll get started with the non-financial stuff, if that's all right? And then you can jump into the other. So at the last meeting, it was asked to look into how many retirements, how many resignations, that type of thing. So Brattleboro Town specifically, this includes certified staff and classified staff, so paras and teachers, custodians, etc. We had 4 retirements. We had 8 people that resigned for a variety of reasons, such as relocating out of town, taking further education, so going back to school, raising a young child, and we had 1 person that had a 1-year only position that ended. So approximately, let's see, 13 in Brattleboro Town.
So what percent is that?
I do not know. I don't know what our total staff in Brattleboro Town is. I can figure that out.
Just,
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's 2 or
Yeah.
10.
I'll try to find out. That's all right. You keep me working, Joe. Let's see. I'm going to pass around some 1% report outs. These are all 1% that were worked on over the summer. So this is just the work that they did. You want to look at that. I have a report out on summer school. That was one of the questions that you asked. So for summer school this past year, and just to give you a little bit of background about summer school, teachers recommend students whom they feel would benefit from some extra reading or math instruction, keeping students engaged with peers on activities. It's a reduced schedule and for 4 weeks. We provide transportation, we provide breakfast, we provide lunch. It's teachers from Oak Grove, Green Street Academy, and Guilford. And of those schools, 183 students were referred by teachers. All 183 were invited. 57 attended in grades K to 5.
And they're Guilford students as well, then?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Putney's the
Grades 3 to 5, you said?
K to 5.
K to 5.
Yeah. Putney is also a Title I school. They have a very robust summer program, so we had asked them a couple of years ago, but we don't anymore because they never want to send kids. They do their own thing. Yeah, they have the pool, exactly. Exactly. So they work on math and literacy, theme-based, so it's different from regular school, but this year we did add an academic support teacher, so that teacher was able to pull small groups and really target math or literacy interventions. We also, over the years, have been working with special education so that if there are students that need summer services through their IEPs, they can come here, join part of the summer school, and also work on their specific IEP goals. We have a speech and language person who comes and works during that time, deaf education. People come and work with their students so the students can be integrated with peers but also get the services that are part of their IEPs, and they also can take advantage of the meals that we're offering and the transportation.
So the funding came from Brattleboro
Title I.
and
Title
Guilford? So Title I from the 2 allocations?
So Title I dumps into WSESU,
Okay.
and then depending upon what percentage of students in the school receive our Title I, free and reduced lunch students, that percentage goes to each school. But we also can use it for WSESU-wide projects such as summer school. So that's why any of those kids, anyone from a Title I school can be invited.
But the Title I schools are just these 3 schools in Putney and Guilford?
Guilford,
Not
Okay.
Dummerston, not Bratt.
not
Okay.
Dummerston or Bratt.
And Vernon.
Right,
Not
not
Dummerston.
Dummerston.
Not
Dummerston,
Dummerston.
not
Yes,
Vernon.
Not Vernon, okay.
No.
The other question was about teacher leaders, and I asked principals if you had had a question about teacher leader specific question.
I was just looking in the budget and wanted to know, it looked like different amounts were being used, and I just thought a quick update.
Is
It
there a
doesn't have
stipend,
to
a
be.
standard?
Right, is there a standard, but then also what is going on in each school? Is it like nobody in one school, 5 in another? It doesn't have to be tonight. You guys could give that to us next week.
Okay, so
Or next
they can
time.
write it out and
Yeah.
Just a review of how it's different, because I remember, Jerry, you mentioned that
We can put
you
it
have
on
a
the
different
agenda.
method and you don't use, I'm not sure if it's teacher leader or what that's called.
So if we put it on the agenda for next time, so Lyle and Frank can get out of here on time anyway, you guys can look it up. Not looking for 500 hours of it, just, quick.
Is that something that you want specifically on the agenda, or is that something that we can put into our school reports when we,
I kind of want to hear it for the budget, is what I was thinking in
Yeah,
preparation, so. But you can certainly say it during your report. It's just if you put a line on.
Yeah, I guess how the schools are different. Because I think, Mark, I think your budget had, 15,000 in the
Correct.
museum. Or at least in the June report. I didn't look line by line in the August report, final report.
So we'll do that next time.
so I'll turn it over to Frank for the others.
Okay, so I've got I think a summary list from Lyle of the various questions, and I saw the email from Jill and David. So I had 9 questions here. I'll zip right through them. First one was about borrowing. Looks like the general
That was
question,
from the meeting.
how much does it cost?
That was a.
Is there another method? So generally, it doesn't cost us anything because historically, school districts have been able to borrow at a rate that's less than they can invest. So for example, the year that we just ended, we borrowed 1.4 million. The rate was 1.85%. And the next day, I invested that, and this is through the same bank and the same level of security that we have for our regular cash. I invested that at 2.12%. So we do make a little bit of a I hate to say profit, but that's what it is.
You make money by borrowing?
We do. Now it's
Well,
regulated.
Put it in the bank.
This is regulated, and years ago, when I first started in public schools, I could make $80,000 to $100,000 for the districts just in a day doing a bank tax anticipation borrowing note. But the problem was that Orange County and California were building schools on that arbitrage, and the Federal Reserve Bank said, geez, you're going to muck up the bond market by manipulating the use of funds in a way that wasn't intended. So they made a major restriction on the how much you can borrow. And so our borrowing is based on a projection of what I foresee we will have a gap in any point in the year between our 14 million, which is about $1 million a month, right, a little more than that, versus when you residents pay your taxes, and when that cash flow comes back to the school, there's a gap. So I forecast that gap, and then we're allowed to borrow up to that amount. So the answer is that it doesn't cost us anything overall, because the gap that does exist is usually very short term. It's like 10 days. So for 10 days, we are paying the 1.8% rate, and we're getting no return. So that reduces our benefit. So that was fiscal year 18 that we just closed. Fiscal year 19, which you just approved, bank is saying interest rates have changed so that they can't offer us the reinvestment side. So that just means that I will borrow absolutely the minimal number of days and hours that we need to fund the gap between taxes coming in and expenses needing to be,
But there's not going to be any expense. That was the whole thing that Spoon was concerned with.
There will be an expense this year.
Oh.
Yeah, so what you'll see, just
But
like
it'll be
you
minimal.
did on the financial statements that you looked at, you'll see Short-term borrowing interest, $24,000. It's in the fiscal year report that we just ended, so there's a cost. But then you see in your revenues, interest income, $35,000. So that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so it's gonna be, even though they've changed the interest rate, the same basic structure will still
No,
exist
because
now?
this year we can't.
It won't be as favorable, but we will still invest cash flow in our sweep account, which it's not equal to the cost of borrowing, but it's gonna. What I'm saying is the bank structured so we borrowed 1.47 million for the whole year, and we probably only had 20 days where we needed to bridge the gap, and so they invested that for the whole year. This year, we have authorization to borrow up to about the same amount, and our positive cash flow will continue to generate interest income, and where we have a gap, that will be an expense, but I do expect the interest income to continue to cover that.
Okay, so it'll be a net value of 0 or maybe a little bit extra.
Just a little bit, yeah. So this is all authorized by statute. It's absolutely the standard way districts manage cash flow, and I wouldn't recommend seeking an alternative given the reliability and the standard within the statutes. So next is large fund, large balance, oh yes, in the district-wide budget, and what explains that. So we did, that's a favorable variance. The district-wide had about 200,000 favorable against the budget. And what we will see as we go through the rest of the questions that a good deal of that is in Green Street. That was another question. Why is Green Street over? So it's important to recognize that in the big picture, we want to say, well, what's the difference between our total revenues for the fiscal year and total expenses? The good news is we're almost exactly what we had planned. You may recall we planned on $130,000 use of fund balance, which is, it's a planned deficit. We intentionally raised $130,000 less than we expected to spend, and our actual results is $121,000. So on a $14 million budget, our variance of $9,000 is an extremely small variance. And I give you that as a context that says, well, some things happen after our budget planning process. And a number of those things are things we've just been talking about. One is that there was a fairly significant increase in the Title I sub-grant for after-school programming and for teacher leader. So you see the expense in the budget, and so that prompts your question. Another one of your questions is, why is Green Street so far over? And a significant part of that is because they're spending the additional money that they received, $54,000 for after-school program, and then I believe it was a fairly significant amount for teacher leader. So it's kind of like that interest and expense scenario. You have more revenues than you expected, and you spent it on the bottom line. Overall, we're in very good shape in terms of what we expected.
I think I'm asking this because I don't understand still after all these years. The big numbers in the district-wide budget that has the $216,000 extra is $109,000 in regular instruction and $81,000 in tuition other. And I'm just on the first page. Yeah, the first space where software gifted and talented, the line under that, regular instruction, 109, and then I think 6 or 7 above that, the 81.7. And those seem like, I don't know exactly what regular instruction means, if that's a total of all of this, or if that's a separate, I think that's a total of all these things in this first section.
That's right, it's a total of everything above it.
Right, and most of that is from tuition other.
Right.
So did we not have to tuition someone we expected we would?
That's right. So we had planned based on the prior year, regular ed students having to be placed outside of the school. We planned for that to reoccur, and that did not reoccur.
Yeah, these others are really not, you know, 17,000 babies and stuff like that, and you just get lucky, but that was kind of big, so I'm not really surprised with that. Great, thanks.
So in that sense, as a preface to, as I was saying, why is Green Street over? So I just explained some of those surpluses were budgeted in district-wide, but spent at Green Street. So we can talk a little bit more about the specifics of that. Let's see, make sure I get, okay, so the next question was why was Green Street over budgeted? So do you want me to kind of summarize that? I kind of gave you the
Well, again,
parts
there's
and pieces.
124,000 was in operations and maintenance of plants, so that's more than the other things, you know, they're not. They're things that we expect to move around, but that one you sort of think is gonna, we're gonna know what it is.
Yep, so that one we had
That's
discussed.
on page,
7.
well, it's 7
I
in
just
my
looked
old.
at what page he was.
This is I circled them on the old one, and then on the new one, I just did the totals.
Yeah,
But,
so yes, it starts on, for Green
think the one
Street,
we had
page
is the-
6. And as far as the building goes, as David's pointing out, that is the largest single area of the overage. And so you may recall, we talked about the retaining wall. That was budgeted for $30,000. But when bids came in, there was recognition that the scope of the work needed to be expanded based on conditions, you know, behind the earth. So the board
Park
approved.
being behind the retaining wall.
Yeah. So the board approved that additional commitment, knowing again that overall we were in pretty good shape. So that explains a third of that variance, and then in the other one where you see a 67,000 variance on the overspent, and that's in the maintenance. The title of that account is called Construction Services, and that is associated. I'm sorry, that was the retaining wall. It's a couple of lines up. Non-tech related repairs and maintenance is where the other overage is, and that was a few unexpected issues that you may recall last summer that Mark and the staff really had to scramble to address. There was a water leak that did significant damage to floors. There were some electrical upgrades that weren't anticipated that needed to be repaired.
Drainage issues around the building.
The drainage and then some roofing issues that were over and above what was anticipated. So we hope the investments and corrections are, you know, keep our maintenance budget stable. I would expect it will, given the major you know, improvements that we just finished. And by the way, that project, the $946,000 Green Street heating project, came in on budget. As you see here, the line just below it says construction services capital. We had budgeted $596,000 and we spent $596,000. The balance of that, I mentioned $946,000, is in the capital fund. So I did want to also mention that we don't have to have a lot of discussion about that tonight, but we had authorization to borrow up to $350,000 for that project, and I've elected not to initiate a borrowing based on, again, your favorable fund balance. You really don't need the additional debt, and you still do have a positive fund balance in the capital fund. We also have a pretty substantial appropriation for long-term capital needs in this fiscal year 19, $240,000 for the White House, which we know we haven't defined that project. So that probably will replenish or restore a good deal of your capital funds. So we're on budget, on time, and we didn't need to borrow.
The other thing I'm really excited about is the energy savings that we're going to benefit from over the years. We've been doing some LED updating with electrical over the past 4 years, and our electric bills are drastically going down from what they were. And
Their
then
solar project anyway.
with
Yeah.
the fuel savings of the boiler project, I think we're in really good shape. With a 94-year-old building, we're actually pretty efficient right now, where 4 years ago, money was just going through the door, going through the windows. Yeah, exactly.
Two quick, last two questions. What does a rental school facility mean? So that was a revenue item in the budget. It's on the first page of the document with revenues. So what that is the supervisory union operates an intensive needs program, and they have asked to use Oak Grove facility, Dummerston School, and now Putney as part of utilizing that, and they're essentially reimbursing the district for the use of the space. That's what that is. And I think
Was that the program that was, I can't think of the man's name that ran that special program at Oak Grove for years, it was before you.
Jack
McKiernan.
Jack McKiernan.
Yeah, is that program? Is that the same program?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Looks a little different, but.
Oh, yeah, no, but it's the same.
Last question is the state retirement. What is it? How does it work? There's three basic components of that. First of all teachers, as a condition of employment, must contribute out of their own money to the teacher retirement system. So that's not an expense to the district. However, law a couple of years ago passed said that a new teacher hired by any public school in Vermont who has never been in the retirement system has to pay an annual fee of about $1,200. So that's part of what you're seeing here. It's hard to predict because we don't know who's going to get hired in the future, who has not been in the system. Another component of the retirement line item that is an expense to the district is any grants funded by the federal U.S. Department of Education. The district has to pay 14%, approximately 14% of the teacher's salary toward the teacher retirement. So that's an expense if, as Brattleboro Town does, receives money for Title I programming. And then there's a third component. Sometimes an employee in the instructional area, like paraeducators, are not eligible to be in the teacher retirement system. And for those folks, the district does pay approximately 5% of salary. That's the municipal retirement. It is part of that budget line item. So those are the three components of that. And I think that was all the questions Lyle had answered the teacher leader in the summer school.
Okay, so you guys need to fly out of here, but I'm wondering before you go, if we might want to look at the only thing left on here is next agenda items we've been doing. Confirmation of location is that's Academy. That's what we decided. We have to decide whether or not to have BCTV here to film our training, which we can decide without Lyle and Frank. The only other thing that's on our agenda, if it's okay to skip Policy Council, Energy Committee that hasn't met, Diversity and Finance, Kim has sent us stuff. Is there anything urgent from Diversity?
We haven't had yet.
So that leaves just the Alternative Governance Subcommittee / the September 19th meeting in Chester and how we want to handle that. So do we want Frank and Lyle to hang for that for just a second, or are we okay to let them go?
No, it's really,
Okay to let them go?
yeah, I'm not sure they
That's fine.
Okay.
sit through that.
So
Another
thank
thing I did want to, I guess I explained a little bit, our work plan, I don't know if it's on our website yet,
I don't know.
but even though we always meet at 5 o'clock, having the times and having it on the website would be great. And it's integrated field review on the,
I think so, yeah.
great, I haven't looked, but
Yeah.
just, yeah, great, thank you.
And by the way, Robin and I made some inroads today with putting out information about childcare for the next meetings and trying to get a
Yes.
volunteer.
And once that is organized a little bit, I think it might be appropriate if the principals could put something in the collar, like our school board meetings this month are these 2 dates, and there will be childcare, and here's the topics, just like maybe some of the big things that we're gonna, like whatever's on the work plan or something like that.
You want 1 or 2? Or should we go one?
Too much paper.
You can cut that out. Okay, so that's all right with the administrators then, what Dave is asking for? All right, so then the last thing on our agenda is to just look at alternative governance slash September 19th, I think. And that is up in Chester.
And we're first
Oh, and the
on
September 17th diversity training.
Oh, what, yeah.
Diversity training, do we want BCTV to be here?
I kind of feel like it might be better to not be filmed. I mean, I just think sometimes there's some personal stuff that comes up at this sort of thing that we might be getting more out of it if we felt not filmed. Is that against any law?
No, I don't think we have
No,
to
it's
be
not a
filmed at all.
public meeting, we're not
Okay.
doing business.
Yeah,
I
then
was
say
thinking, I hadn't
fine.
thought about that part of it, mostly because I'm hardly ever aware that the camera's in the room in any context.
Well, the only thing I thought that would be good to have it is for people to see what we're
Yeah,
trained
and-
in.
Right.
But the
And
one that
also
we did
just for-
last December, we didn't film, right?
No, and it's all that information aside
The
from
one with
not being.
Carrie, that wasn't filmed?
I think it was filmed, actually. It
But
wa-
that wasn't more like an informational presentation, not so
Yeah.
much of like us talking about it.
Oh, that-
You know
this
what I
one's
mean?
different. All right.
Yeah, I feel like this one is gonna be more interactive,
Hopefully.
so I
For 4 hours or something.
Yeah.
I just,
I think it would,
I just wanted just to consider this, and I think you're right, and I think we probably shouldn't. But what was in my mind was that we're gonna be, I don't know for sure after this is over, but I think we're gonna be looking to expand this out to the staff. And although we haven't, I don't think formally decided that, but it's also something that, not just for the community to know about, but to actually be able to see kind of what's involved in this. You know,
Yeah, it would be
There's
good
an awful lot of
If
information.
you
that
say to
people-
the other people on staff, this is
But
what we
again, if
did.
it's, I don't know how to judge how much it's
I
gonna
can't
work.
be here for
You're not gonna
that,
be here.
and so I would love to be able to see it.
okay. Well, I mean, I personally feel like I can handle my own comfort zone with being filmed and participating in something like this, but I don't want to speak for everyone that's going to be part of it. If others feel comfortable with that, then
No, I
that's
think
fine.
I think you're really right.
All right, so the
I
answer
don't know how to
is,
do both.
unless M has something.
If this isn't necessarily a public meeting, or if it's not an official meeting, I could probably edit out anything that seems uncomfortable to people. I don't know,
We
I
can edit out anything that's too
I can
confidential
check on
anyway.
that.
I don't know if it's that so much as people being reserved about sharing.
Do I have any feelings from you guys?
I see him
Robin-
nodding.
I like Robin's points very much. I think a camera might take away from the discussion.
And I wonder, I think you're right, I think we should decide that. It might be wise though, just before we finally do it, to check with the presenters.
Yes, that's what I'm going to meet with Dottie next week, but I can even shoot her an email before that and say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Should we not be filmed while we do this,
Yeah.
or would it be something that's not going to go that
Yeah. And if she's ambivalent, we won't.
controversial? I feel like it should probably go controversial. Like, if we're going to get something out of it, it's
It
probably
needs to
going to be something that people might be feeling uncomfortable at times. That's sort of when you're growing, when you're pushed outside your comfort zone a little bit. So
Especially something
if
as
someone's
intense.
being filmed while they're outside their comfort zone, that might inhibit their ability to participate in
To
it.
be in a comfort zone.
But then Deb can't see it. So I hear the overwhelming opinion then is that we don't want it to be filmed.
Unless we hear otherwise from,
Right, I'll check with Dottie, and if she says, oh no, this
Okay.
is something that everyone wouldn't mind being filmed doing, then we can change it, but I would say for now, my inclination is to say no.
Okay, so that's a no, and then that means you don't come back to us until the first time in October.
Fine.
so September
All right.
17th, and it's from 2 to 6?
No.
5 to 9.
It's 5
5
to
to
9.
5 to see, I didn't have any idea.
5 to
That's
9,
good.
and I have asked Guilford Country Store to do catering for that night. So we'll have
And it's here.
a break, it's in here. And I think we said that staff, anybody you wanted to invite or any of the other schools.
Yeah, Lyle invited the other boards, but I think only about 3 or 4 people are planning on joining us.
So I said 12 for the count of food, does that sound right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
There's at least 15 of us,
They always
right?
bring too much. Yeah, you're right.
There's normally 15
Yeah, 2 more board
of us,
members.
and if you bring in other people.
Yeah, I'd say put 20 maybe.
All
And
right.
plus Dottie.
And the teachers will have stuff in the.
Well, I don't know
staff
if
room in
any
the morning.
staff are coming.
Well,
So
I haven't put that out to anyone to.
maybe we didn't
but
mean for staff.
I don't remember hearing that, but, I mean, I could, but I don't have to, so.
It would have to be
I
like
just don't want to be
a
the.
very
you bring
specific
somebody and I
person.
don't-
We
yeah.
can't be like, invite all your staff, like, you know, that would be too many people for this.
Well, I mean, I don't know that a lot of staff would want to come to something from 5 to 9 right at the beginning of the school year. I just thought it'd be
No, and it was
open
intended to be
for us.
for us, yeah.
Okay, so
I mean,
staff, that's
yeah.
fine.
I hope that we're offering this to all the staff at another date.
We need to decide that, but I think
Yeah.
only because we need to
Yes,
experience
this is like
it
the
first.
jumping off point of it, and then I hope that is where we'll be going with it, but I think.
So 20
just
people
the-
for
the
food, no
number-
BCTV,
Yeah.
no staff, but other board members have been invited.
Yeah, I told Dottie this is gonna be for like 12 to 20 people.
Okay.
So that's why I'm just trying to not make it grow too much.
I just want to point out, Robin, in terms of like our in-service professional development days, those are booked.
I remember the long conversation about this with Andy, but I still feel like that's a challenge. It's not a blockade.
And there's next
You
year.
know what I'm
too.
saying? We can still find a way to offer this, and we'll have to be creative or planning with long-term thinking, not like, so next month, make everyone come. You know, I realize that you guys have things that are booked years or even 2 years in advance, but I still want to have that as a goal.
Robin, can you check with Dottie about her needs as far as setup, so I can let the custodians know, like if she
Yes.
needs the projector and tables and chairs or open space?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, so I think we're set on that one, so that just leaves us back to September 19th in Chester. I did check today, I couldn't talk to Donna Russo-Savage, I talked to Brad James and then Emily Simmons, just to see if there was anything different than what they had sent out, and whether, and they said that in general, if the board is of 2 minds, which doesn't happen much apparently, but then, you know, split the time. It is meant for the board to speak, the public speaks at a
They have their own
different
time.
time
Yep.
during that. And that we can do written information before, at the time, or even after, if we wish to
Yeah,
send something.
They want it by the 17th. if you're gonna
And
send
they, well, she said they'd take it after as well. And that they are, they've sent out that sheet, and that's what they'd like to focus on, would be anything new or different. So are you planning on going up?
No. It's
So-
Singapore.
Oh, all right, so it's not,
Yeah, I
and
just
I don't
found
think
that out
Spoon
last
is
week.
going either, right? From what he
Spoon's
said?
away.
For the
He's still
17th?
thinking, I think so.
And Kim can't.
19th.
So, 19th, sorry. So that means it's you and me, David. So when we went to the last one, it was, you know, just split time, and you
Yeah.
spoke and then I spoke. And we could represent last time, basically it was 3-2. Robin, do you still feel like you were, where are you at? You want me to say, or you just want me to say the board is split?
Just, you can, just say split. Let's just leave it at that.
All right. That's really, I think, it for that.
I don't see, I mean, given how we've functioned through this whole 3-year process, I don't think anything else makes any sense than to present, you know, for me to say why I think it's a good idea. And they've said, you know, they've got their things they want you to respond to, and for you to say why it isn't. And then, you know, the state board has to make the decision. So, I don't think there's anything else to do.
Okay, and then I just wanted to respond, Ron, to your comment last time about the Brattleboro, you were voted on by Brattleboro, we need to watch out only for Brattleboro as long as we're voted by Brattleboro. And I was thinking about that afterwards, so I was kind of shocked, didn't know how to respond at the moment. But I guess when I'm saying that I want us to look forward and think about how going forward and we're going to merge, I don't see that as exclusive of being for Brattleboro. I see what's good for Brattleboro as good for the supervisory union. I don't see them as independent issues.
Well, I guess I said that because there was some kind of comment that we should be careful in our considerations to think about the fact that it's going to be probably a merged district. So that's why I was responding to by saying I still think that until the merger, we can just stick with our usual mission of just considering what we usually would consider.
We have to. I mean, we still have to draft it. But I mean, if the state board orders a merger and it's not done yet, if that happens, then we still have to go through and plan a regular budget process and go through all those things while this transition board figures out what they need to do. And so our interest, statutorily, our interest is to represent the town of Brattleboro at this point. When we go through the process of discussing and designing how we want the leadership councils to be in our school, because that's going to happen whichever governance structure is in place, that's going to help. That'll give some guidance to the other towns. But again, it has to be, what do we think is going to be best for our schools at this point?
Right, I guess that's what I was getting at. It wasn't that I thought that we shouldn't, that we should pretend like this isn't going to happen. I wasn't saying that, but just that as we are coming to what is possibly the end of this board's existence, that I feel like it's my directive as a board member to see what can we do to put these three schools in a good position as we move into the next phase of whatever that merger looks like.
And I definitely agree with that. I thought I was hearing you say, all for us and make sure we secure what is ours and not look broadly.
I mean, that's really mischaracterizing what I said.
That's what I was understanding.
I did not say
I just want to
that.
make sure that I'm clear on what I'm trying to say too, is I'm not trying to give away Brattleboro stuff either. I'm trying to look at it from a more encompassing, larger view of what makes sense, where we position ourselves, but how we fit into a merged system when we're thinking. So when we're looking at leadership councils, for example, and setting that up, I think that's excellent that we do for ourselves, but it's also an example for the rest of the group of how they might work. And again, I think we're in a really unique position. We're the only district with more than one building. And we even have it in more than one town, or more than one county. So what we do makes a difference.
We're more than half of the district.
Right.
The supervisory union. Or the
Supervisory
future
union and
district.
elementary. The real specific example that I was thinking about was we have a $700,000 fund balance. And we also have capital needs down the road. And if we, for instance, did the pellet boiler do these, you folks, they can go on, right?
Well, we're almost done anyway, right? If you
didn't hear
could get
what
up
you
and
said.
go home if you
I'm not sure you need to
want.
be here, we're going to just do the next agenda and this, so it's.
We've done the next agenda.
Oh,
So
well,
we're-
no, actually, it's a whole bunch of things that, well, we still need to do the next.
We just talked about what the location was.
No, she wrote them down as we went through the whole.
Yeah,
thing.
but there are more specific, well,
Okay, so finish your thought on that.
yeah, is that if we, and because we are the Brattleboro representatives, I would feel pretty compelled to make sure that that money gets invested in something that over the long, like in energy improvements, windows here, boiler there, something in energy improvements that's going to significantly reduce the future tax burden. That's going to save money. It'll save money for everybody if it's a merged district, but specifically Brattleboro, we'll see
I
that.
think that's in the articles of agreement that we wrote as a study committee and that was written as the other new draft that's out.
What is?
that the money that comes in, if it's earmarked already for something, remains earmarked.
Oh, yeah, what I'm saying is we have
Well,
to
he's saying,
earmark it.
let's make sure we earmark it.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm
what
saying.
his point was.
Yeah, because otherwise,
Well, I think it
anything
is in
extra
the
or any
capital
debt
plan.
becomes everybody's.
Yes, but I,
No, being on the Brattleboro Town School District capital plan is not earmarked. Once the Brattleboro Town School District is gone, we'll have to spend it. Unless there's a
I didn't
contract
see it
already
that way,
out
but
that's not
maybe,
completed.
well, so that would be something to ask.
Yeah, but
Those are the
that's
types
me-
of questions
that's-
that
yeah,
I'd like us
yeah.
to think forward
Yep,
and
exactly.
try to do, but I'd also like us to think forward in a larger view. I mean, does it make sense, for example, can we do the Oak Grove boiler project and, I don't know, Guilford boiler project and try to get a better price at the same time? Just some of those things that maybe can be combined in some way. But yeah, we have the money set aside in our budget and the capital plan, that should be where it's going to stay. And that was how we wrote the study committee article over here.
So I think
I'll
this
take
will
money
unravel
for
better
new
as we go
windows.
forth.
I'll take money for new windows.
Yeah, those glass windows have to go.
Yeah.
How about not
We
just
have to
the
replace that
cement?
whole glass block side of the building over there. It's a big.
We can all spend the
project.
money very fast.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on this? So then let's look quickly on the agenda. And I didn't write down all the stuff that Lyle had written down.
I may have, but let me just go through the things that I did write down as we went along.
Are you
Um,
clerking this, or do you want me to write it down into an email?
Well, I've got it here so I can add it in. Let me just put it here so I remember to do it. And I'll get this to Lyle. I won't be able to type this up tomorrow, but I can do it Friday, and I'll get it to Black mostly fast. We didn't talk about the parent survey, which is on our work plan for tonight. We didn't talk about the leadership councils, so that definitely needs to go on the next, those two need to go on the next agenda. Teacher leaders, programs and budget, Lyle did write that down. Robin had asked in the last meeting about community engagement, and I don't think that made it onto the work plan, so that should go on there. We can talk about.
We did talk about it a little bit at this meeting already, but yeah, I think we should keep.
Yeah, and so let me just star those. And then we talked about, when we talked about the hiring, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago was got the numbers of each classroom, how many
It's
students.
on my list right over here.
Yeah, so,
I'd like
so,
that.
so let's get that.
Can we have the numbers of students next time in each of your classrooms, just
Okay. And then
18 kindergartners?
the other thing that Robert had mentioned was, how do we know when there are 43% of a third grade class students are on academic support, when they are in fourth grade, what the percent is? And because there's turnover in the cohorts, it's hard to get exact about that, but it's definitely trackable information. And if we know the kids that are the same in the cohort, we can track that. We just need to.
Is that next meeting, or is that
No,
just
that's just
general?
something. It's just something that got talked about, but then didn't get on an agenda, or I think
I
it
think
just
maybe
got
instead
talked
of
about, but
counting
not
how
anymore.
many per year, it might be more helpful to look at how many emerge from that. How many students that are on some kind of academic support. I can't remember exactly what we were talking about then.
Well, and
That was the
I want to
academic
get at
support
the,
position.
I want to get at the idea that I think is there, but I'd like to see some sort of a graphical form to prove it and put out to our town meeting in particular. What we're doing all of these inputs, like the tutoring and the extra academic support teachers and all of that. Can we look somehow, and I don't know how, over time and see that decline?
That's what I'm trying to ask. Is it like a caseload, the academic support, people have specific students they work with, or do they more just go and see who needs help
All
today?
kids.
Yeah.
They can work with all kids.
They work with
Okay.
all kids and it's even
Okay,
rotates
so
them
it
down
wouldn't
according
be
to what
the-
they need.
So
thing
what
that
I'm
I was
thinking about is to put
gonna say.
a parking lot at the bottom of the agenda and put that in it, and also the leadership councils in it. Because we don't necessarily have to get at that right away, and all of a sudden it's got to be a really big agenda for our next meeting.
I do feel that,
No, go ahead.
I do feel that what some of the things that you're talking about in terms of like looking at school interventions, the growth of those students, or, that's all data, and those are all the things that we're going to bring up in our individual school focus. Those are things that we brought
That's a
into
good
our talks
So
with
if we
you
do it
earlier.
then, that would be good, and that,
Right,
those
and
are
so-
scheduled out before the town meeting that I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's Academy in October, and then December for Green, and then January for Oak Grove. And so that's what we've done, is provided you with data about our kids, the programs that we have, teacher leader stuff, looking at Ames Web, looking at all our different data and assessments that we take with kids, and to look at growth patterns and who are the kids that, just,
So you're
where we-
saying it wouldn't be tracked by who needs the academic support teacher, that particularly, but you would have data on the student of like, they needed a lot of support and then as they grew older, they were more at grade level.
Well,
It
we
won't be on each
we all have individual data. We look at that individual data with our vertical teams, our grade level teams, our EST. We use all of that data as we're considering what interventions that students need. I'm saying for our school reports, we'll provide a more global
Right.
school-based
Okay, that's what I was
focus on how many, what our MTSS looks like in our school.
And what was really meaningful a couple of times ago is when you gave that example student, this one came in and was 2 grades below where he should be for reading. We did this, after 6 weeks we retested.
Yep.
Those individual examples, plucking 1 or 2 is not a bad thing for us. Maybe I'm just.
Yeah, but I still would like to see
Obtuse, but I
something
like
like, I don't know if this exists within the global view that you're talking about, Jerry, but like, 35 students were receiving some kind of MTSS for reading in 2nd grade, and then those students
3rd grade.
by 6th grade, only 8 of those were still receiving support or something like that. Is that the kind of thing that is within the data, the way that you have it?
For some, I mean,
That's the
depending,
same thing I'm
yeah.
saying, like the
I mean, if you-
decline of,
Yeah,
and the same thing.
I think
like
what-
right now, hypothetically, not even hypothetically, I mean, without giving you like raw data, just in
Ballpark.
that the early intervention that we do, I mean, we really front load, I think we all do, front load with behavior. A lot of our step support is in our K2 classrooms.
That was the purpose,
Because they're
yeah.
just, they don't really know how to be a student yet.
That was an
And-
intentional change.
Yes, and
Yeah.
so a lot of strong academic support in our K2, K3, because the goal is that as they age, they kind of age out of all of those really intensive level supports and become more, better, they have more internal and self-coping skills and self-awareness. We teach them to be self-starters with their academics and anything else you guys want to talk about over there. But I mean, that's you can see. I can definitely see that growth happening because I know where my human resources are in my building, and so that tells me that that's the direction that we're moving. But again, I don't. When we talk about when we talk about our schools, we'll be able to show you a little bit in more real raw data of what that truly looks like. That's not always unfortunate, but you still have students who struggle, and we go through the different EST process. We go, and then possibility of referrals to special ed, but that's again part of the whole process, whole intervention, MTSS.
And in pre-K, we have 3 points along the year where we can show that growth. 3 checkpoints.
John?
Self-regulation.
Yeah, I was going to add too that part of the purpose of that intervention is preventative, right? So you can, one quantifiable measure is how many students are being referred to special education. Where that early intervention did not actually meet the needs of that student, and so if we can look at special ed referral numbers as indicative of how effective that intervention was.
Robin wasn't here when that change happened. Actually, it was before we even centralized special ed services, when we just basically started identifying and what's the word, it's not intervening with kids when the need, and then if the need was greater than could be done in the classroom, then they got referred. But I think though, Rob, that your question is a question that I get all the time, and it's really hard to answer, and I keep asking for data and thinking trying to find it out. But I think if we looked at grades 3 through 6, how many, when a student is getting academic support in grade 3, do they continue to get it in 4th, 5th, and 6th? Then if they do, what does that happen? We could even look into what happens when they get to the high school. I think that's valuable to know, because all of the processes, all of the things that all the interventions and all the programs are intended to get kids to the point where they are independent learners. And
But the data is muddied by the fact that there's so much transiency, so that's
But
why
we
I think
can-
it would be more
right.
valuable to track what happened to individuals, a bunch of individuals, rather than the whole number of kids in the grade, because some of those kids might have not been receiving all that support last year.
a 4th grade cohort or 3rd grade cohort for the overwhelmingly stays the same. I mean, there are probably 13 or 14 kids in there that are there all the way through those 4 years in the same school. It's not, I don't think it's more turnover than, well, I don't know what the percentage is.
I don't think that's true.
It
because-
seems like there is a lot of turnover.
Well, we should know that, yeah.
But she looked at, Jerry, you shared that last year, and you said that from the time you had come in and got, was it you? Or maybe it was Jen?
I think it may,
Before,
yeah, I
but-
remember that, yeah.
But looking in the amount of kids that when you came in and when they were graduating, that very few of those were the same.
I feel like I'm remembering
kids.
30% as a number
Yeah,
about that
exactly. It was
Amy
like
said.
30% of the kids that actually made it all the way through elementary school in one school.
I thought it was 30% that didn't, but it was still a really
It
big
was
number.
low, yeah,
Yeah.
a low number
I
that
wouldn't say
actually made
that
it through.
I don't know about, I can't speak for the other two schools, but I wouldn't say that that's the case for Oak Grove.
You think they're more,
I feel like
staying longer?
it was Andy
I
that
think so.
said something
You
about
think more what?
about 1/3 of the
I don't
students
have-
turning over
I
during the
have
course of
every
the
year,
I have a lot greater, more than 50% of my students who, since I've been there for the 4 years, that are still the same students in the same cohort.
Yeah, it was 30% that changed, not
That's what it
30 that
was,
remained the same.
30% each year.
But, and that was at Academy of 1 year that Andy was looking at, I think, not.
But somebody else somewhere gave us a number of graduate and that they had come in and they'd seen those kids from like 3rd grade up
Okay.
to 6th grade and was surprised that of the, say, 20 kids, I thought maybe it was Jen at Oak Grove before you, that only 12 of them or something, I mean, it was almost half that
Weren't there
weren't
anymore by
there
6th grade.
anymore. Yeah.
Well, I think just in our numbers we presented tonight, so for Green Street, we had 38 kids move. 21 moved to our school, 17 moved out to another school. So that's 38 movements within 2.5 months.
And what it essentially is,
240.
like 20%, 20 of the students turned over each year. Or if this is a typical summer, that was just over the summer. That doesn't even count the people that went somewhere during the year. So
Right.
it would probably be higher than that, even like 30 or 35 people that were replaced by somebody else by the next year.
And we don't count new kindergarten students in this number.
Right.
And if you think about
Or
the
say
foster
15%.
Right.
the high rate of foster care in the younger years, that impacts this as well, because that can impact being placed in a foster care in another community means there's changes. So that all gets factored in.
And those
I
new
mean-
kids come in and affect the cohort as well.
Yes.
I'd still like to at least try and get not now, not in the near future, but at some point, try to see if we can't find a way to track that progress, to see which
That's the
kids.
same thing I'm asking for,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of a chart of how much special ed or how many referrals out or behavioral problems, maybe all of these things come into some, and I'm doing it down because that's what I assume we're going to see. Hey, I realized, Deb, that we've given a night to Academy, Oak Grove, and Green. We need to give a night to you on our work. So that takes us up to February 6th. Would you like that night?
That's Oak Grove, I think.
No, Oak Grove is January 2nd.
Oh, you mean for the?
The meetings at Oak Grove.
Focus?
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right, yes. We're at Oak Grove, but the focus could be EES.
Sure.
Okay.
So I will send an email.
One other thing that I wanted to get on the agenda, and again, it doesn't have to be in the next one, but I want to get it into a parking lot or something, is to follow up on the integrated field review conversation we had, because that's what the
What did you
state.
want to follow up on? I thought we kind of resolved it.
Well, we didn't resolve it. I mean, there was,
We said that there was not a lot of specifics.
right, there's not a lot of specifics, but nonetheless, this is what the state is using to assess whether we're progressing adequately on the educational quality standards. And to not ask for some evidence over the course of the year that in these recommended areas we're seeing progress. And there are a couple that I mean, a lot of them it's going to happen anyway.
Well, we don't even know if those
For
were,
our school.
right, we don't even know if those were things that were found to be below the standard at these 3 schools or at somewhere else in the SU.
These are, well, again, these are the things that they're going to be looking for the next time they come. And if we haven't addressed them and it is us,
Right.
then we're going to,
I guess I
we're not
didn't
paying
take-
attention to what
But
the
it
state
seems
is
hard
asking.
to
And this is
assess
one of the-
progress because we don't even know if there was a problem or not.
Well, I don't think
According
that-
to these people, we don't
Yeah.
know if there's.
I don't
I'm sure
think
the
so.
principals know if they think that there's a problem with that or not.
Well, again, that's why I wanted to get it on the agenda, because I think that asking to see that that we're ensuring that everybody is getting adequate instruction, intervention, enrichment is worth looking into, and well, there's several things here. The stuff like redesigned curriculum and things like that, that's going to happen anyway. That's all, that's in the.
Why don't we do this, Dave? Why don't we put that in your parking lot idea?
Okay.
And we'll make sure that
We'll
we
get back
look
to it.
at it, but also it may come up kind of organically during their presentations. So maybe
Okay.
we can come back to that sometime.
Why don't you
in
just,
April.
could you
March.
just send an email, would this be violating the rule of like the things you had particular concern about to the principals, and then they could make sure when they give their night focusing on their school that they address that specific thing of what's
Not
going on?
violating.
Well,
That's good.
I would be happy to do that. I mean, they've got these, so it almost doesn't matter, but,
But you've got certain stuff on there highlighted that you really wanted to see answers to, so that's why I was saying maybe if those
well,
are the
I have
particular
a number of
areas.
reasons for highlighting things.
Okay,
but-
well,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
know if you meant like talk about everything on this whole evaluation, or if you want them to talk about certain things, then maybe just send an email to make sure that they go over
Well,
that.
I think probably, yeah, I will do that. Because as I said, there are things on, professional development needs and things we know are going to be happening. There are other things that, and we'll see it because there are in-services and things like that planned. But there are other things that aren't as specific that I would like to hear about. So I will.
I think there's also things on our board report that we're highlighting in terms of student programming, school-wide events, field trips, what else is on here? And, that definitely shows the amount of enrichment opportunities, just curriculum extension opportunities that all 3 of our schools
Well, I know they're
are providing for our schools. So,
Yeah, some of the
I-
things you could look at it and be like, they're not talking to these 3 schools. If they're saying like, there's not adequate after-school opportunities, I think they were talking about somebody else, because it seems very
Yeah,
robust
I
to
don't
me.
think that's okay.
So,
But, yeah.
you
No, I
can kind
just-
of use common sense to assess which ones could possibly have applied to these schools.
Okay. We're over by 7 minutes. I think we've done the agenda. The confirmation of the next meeting will be Aaron Academy. We did get Aaron here tonight, so even if it continues to be summer, we'll be all right. Anything else that we need? Reminder that the next meeting, we have no administrative reports or anything else. It's
Just
just
come and
the
eat.
training, and there'll be supper at a halfway point somewhere. You can remind Daddy of that too, in case she
Yes.
wants to make a birthday. And then the weekend after that is, or the weekend, sorry. The next meeting after that will be Kim leading it. I won't be here for that one, the first one,
October something.
October 5th, I think.
It's Academy.
What's
Academy
that?
night.
Is it? I'm missing Academy.
Oh, no, it's sorry. No, I'm
It's
bad.
not? Okay, good. I thought I didn't.
Don't rush it, Jerry. You need time to plan.
Is it?
And when you guys are looking at that, an hour is more than enough, guys. I mean, this does not have to be a 2-hour.
With everything he's putting on.
What's that?
I know.
And if you want to bring in somebody to assist with it, I think that's perfectly acceptable too.
I'd
like
like
we
to have
did last
staff
year.
present again. I thought that was really nice last year.
But keep staff with the idea, 2-3 minutes.
Yes.
Not
Yeah.
10 minutes each, because,
Yeah.
I mean, then I know they don't get to talk to us maybe enough. Maybe that's part of
I
it.
think that's the thing, because when they get the opportunity, I mean, our staff they put a tremendous amount of time into those presentations.
Exactly.
You're inviting
So-
experts to talk about the thing that they're passionate about.
Exactly.
So that's why you
Exactly.
end up with 10 minutes.
But the other flip side of that is, like, that meeting last year went for like 3 hours with Green Street, so it's more than I can take in at one time, and then I don't remember all the wonderful things they said. So if there's something while you're preparing that like is, wow, this is really phenomenal, I really want to talk more about what the counselor's doing or something, let's pull that out. We've left some space this year in the work plan, and pull that out, and maybe we want that for the 3 schools to have a look at that deeper for all of
On
them.
a different meeting.
On a different date.
Is the goal of the board, though, just to really make sure that on those school focus nights, that that's really the only thing on the agenda? That's
Yeah,
what I
that is all
thought.
on.
So that we wouldn't have a 3 hour, because I think last year when we had an hour and a half presentation, then we also had an hour and a half worth about
Yes.
business.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think that
We've
was,
tried,
that
but
was-
I
But
seem to
let's-
remember that meeting, I think that one at Green Street, there was also a long conversation about Act 46, if I'm remembering that
well,
one
there's
right.
always
So
long conversation.
that was part of the 3 hours.
But here's the reality of life. We can say that we leave stuff. We left stuff for tonight. We're supposed to be pretty open, but then we were just supposed to be following up with Patrick and Bob, and turned out to be 45 minutes or so of discussion between the endowment money and the,
yeah.
which was good because we've been waiting for a year on the endowment answers. But, and budget too was going to be like a 5-minute type thing, but we had a lot more in-depth answers, which we needed from. So anyway, we can say, but it doesn't seem to always work.
Doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, so maybe if they have the goal of limiting their portion to an hour, and we have the goal of limiting the rest of it to an hour, then we'll hopefully end
Or
up with a 3 hours or less meeting.
We'll do a goal of nothing, and we'll
Right.
go for that and see how
And
we
if we
do.
could.
But
if
it
we
isn't
are
gonna be
inviting
literally
staff-
nothing, because there's still things that have to be like administratively done on the
If there's
agenda.
anybody that has to be, yeah,
Yeah, okay, so we'll make our goal to be 5 minutes for our part, and the rest about the school.
You guys go
And
for
then
an
I
hour.
hope that makes it
Could
to
the
2
school go
hours.
first in case, so staff
Yeah.
that are sitting
Yeah, I think
to
you did
present
last
could
time
go
too,
first,
but
and then- yeah.
an hour. Go for an hour, not
Okay.
for the 2 hours.
Okay. Yep, got it.
Yeah? And then, I don't know, find some way to, I love hearing from people when they're so enthusiastic, but, you know, if we need to bring them in again, let's do that. Because there's exciting things that happen. Motion to adjourn,
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go, 7:12. I have eggs.